I'm Jay Archer, and welcome to Landscapes for Better Living. And here we are in the calm before the storm. Just another episode in our chronicling the evolution of change in the wetland. And this is ever changing in response basically to stormwater. So stormwater feeds this 22-acre wetland. It's basically a do not disturb zone. That means no man-made inputs. So while we have a lot of invasive species, what you're going to see, basically nature at work, okay? And nature's really having a party out here today because it's got a lot of cool stuff going on. As we weed whack a path here twice a year, and we wood chip it every couple of years. We're going to take a little tour of the island. Here's the deer trail, the Maine deer trail. So the Maine deer trail, as they come around the edge of the actual aquatic zone or the marginal wetland, which is partially phragmites, partially all kinds of other stuff, they come cross over here and they come out on the road, cross the road, and continue down along the wetland. This is a vernal pool. This is usually only wet in spring, but this is the second year of extreme water refilling this continually. So normally this would completely dry out from late spring till sometime in fall, winter, or the following spring. What you see here, aside from the garbage that we don't clean up, is naturally discharged from this whole wasteland of civilization that feeds this natural area, is a lot of duckweed. So the flushing that happens, like with the storm event that we're looking at that's coming in the next 24 hours, should be substantial rain from 2 to 4 inches, which we're getting about each week. So we've got almost 100 inches of rain in 12 months. That's approaching a rainfall amounts. So things that like it dry are not getting that. Things that like it wet are getting plenty of that. So we're seeing a shift in the plant populations that are favored by the hydrology being FAC wet plus in the scientific nomenclature. So while upland trees like pines and hickories and hardwoods like it dry, predominantly dry, occur 99% of the time in uplands. The plants that occur in wetlands occur 99% of the time in water or at the edge of water. Their feet are in water. In the middle is what we call the mesic zone, or where the inundation and drought occurs. So it's constantly moving back and forth. That occurs everywhere in nature, but it doesn't stay wet on the top of a hill or in an upland. It may stay wet in the middle zone in the mesic, which it has been for 2 years now. And the wetland necessarily goes without saying it's wet. Here's buttonbush, which is a first indicator of true wetland. It's obligate species, which means it only occurs in a wetland. This flower is great, and it's a true shrub. So it occurs here, and here's part of the same tree-like structure. It's a beautiful plant. There never used to be water this far. Only in the past several years. It oxbowed around from the true swamp stream. So this is technically Beaver Swamp. And swamps, marshes, they evolve, they change. The main water course feeds under the bridge, comes out in the sound eventually. But in here, it's great habitat. This tree was uprooted somewhere around Sandy, and it's still growing. It's green ash, which is will exist throughout this wetland, and they're still alive. The roots are still attached, and you could see raccoon tracks here. One of the many examples of wildlife throughout. There's always deer tracks, and we saw an osprey with a fish roosting over our head yesterday, and we saw a belted kingfisher this morning. There's egrets out here, and an abundance of wildlife. There's coyote here and lots of deer. So here is the iris pseudocaris, which is claimed to be invasive, but we like that it pops up in all different areas from time to time with that beautiful yellow flower and does attract pollinators. This is a stump that floated like a glacial boulder in a disposed from a glacier, but instead it's a flood. Be very quiet. And we can hear the sound of frogs. Frogs are indicator species. This is class seeded D water. It's really polluted. It's one of the most polluted waterways actually in Westchester. What these wetland plants are doing miraculously is they're cleaning the water. They're a biofilter. They're absorbing toxins and storing it in their roots in the case of Phragmites, or breaking it down and off-gassing it into the atmosphere to be broken down naturally by elements in the atmosphere. This is an interesting plant. This is spatterdock, and it blooms earlier in the year. It's a yellow plant, and it's also indicative of Class C water. This is an adaptation to where civilization and nature meet. It's a silver maple, you can tell by the leaves. Normally a street tree or on the edge of the urban environment, but here it's adapted, even though it keeps shedding dead pieces, structurally to be perfectly happy here, and it also is good habitat for birds and everything else. This is normally a place rich in snapping turtles. We haven't seen any recently, not a good sign. And snapping turtles have a life expectancy up to 75 years. And usually we see a ton of them. We're seeing very little. We see some box turtles, painted turtles, but that's about it. So more species disappearing by observation. So we shouldn't get caught up too much on what's native and what's not. What we need to prepare for is future ecology and what's going to work and how we can adapt. You could see a glimpse of the yellow buds of the spatterdock out in the wetland. That's the flower of those big green leaves. That's a big yellow flower. It's a tough plant. It really takes all kinds of toxins in and smiles in response. Of course, across the way now we see where the sun hits it all day. There's a great little stand of Mosqueros, which is Mosqueros hibiscus, which is the native swamp rose. Here's our Eurasian invader, which is purple loosestrife, but it still attracts a lot of wildlife. And together, it's rather amazing. And we're going to see that there's a great variety of life here. If you like what you've seen, check out our website, greenjadelandscaping.com.